Hey guys, I guess I've been promising a video of some sort. I think at some point I should probably do a video on map making, city maps, and wilderness maps. But for today, since I've been working on my dungeon underneath the city of Bolgrad, I thought I'd go a little bit more into explaining some of the story behind that location. And sorry, I'm a little bit burpy today. Um, so, at any rate, Bulgrad is built on this big freestanding rise called the Cunning Tor. And that location is significant in the history of my campaign world, going all the way back to when I was first working on the mythologies and some of my favorite big bad villains for the setting. The Cunning Tor has some natural caves underneath it that go fairly deep underground. I think the furthest I'm going to take that dungeon is maybe level 4, and it's going to be a mixture of caverns and underground water systems and sewers, and also the laboratory of this fellow named Pazar Rune Sin, who was a general with the Necrogarchy of Lang that marched into this area about 300 years ago at the head of one of 3 huge armies of evil, and conquered this kingdom, the kingdom of Osvik, and some of the surrounding kingdoms, and founded his own evil kingdom in the north called the Kingdom of Asmorgar. But let's back up a little bit. So one of my main god or goddess figures in this world is a character named Aglaika. And Aglaika was this innocent, sweet, youthful little goddess figure in the elven pantheon. And she had very limited amount of power for a very long time. She had a little bit of creative power in that she's responsible for making little things like snails and butterflies and that sort of thing. At some point, way back at the beginning of the world, the elven sun god took an interest in Aglaika, even though he had a consort amongst the other goddesses that was much more powerful and important than little Aglaika. And in order to get her Aglaika's attention and to woo her, he gave her a present of a small piece of his much more great creative power. Now, Aglaika was the daughter of the elven god of magic, which comes in just a minute as being kind of important. So I'm not going to get into all the weird names or anything, but suffice to say that the consort of the sun god, his legitimate, wife almost in the pantheon, figures out that he's been trying to woo this nothing of a minor goddess, Aglaika. And in jealousy, she lures Aglaika into the wilderness to meet with her and talk with her, and she curses her and turns Aglaika into a Medusa figure. In fact, Aglaika is the only such figure in my world. I only have one of these creatures in my whole world. And that's her punishment. And so Aglaika is appalled and horrified and feels completely betrayed by everyone because, she was just minding her own business. She was kind of clueless about what the sun god was up to. And so she runs and hides in the world. And the place that she finds is the caverns under the Cunning Tor, way up in the northern, western, remote corner of the world, way beyond the Goblin Spite Mountains, about as far away from the kingdom of the elves, which eventually became called the Weeping Realm off in the east, as you can possibly get. And there she remained, hiding down in the darkness next to this underground lake, and exploring and experimenting with this additional creative power which the sun god had given her. So now she could make more interesting things. Nothing too major, but she figured out she could make things like slimes and sort of gelatinous cubes and things like that. So there she remains for a really long time, kind of minding her own business. And eventually many changes happened in the world. I forgot one really important part. Her father, the elven goddess of magic, came to find her. He figured out that something was amiss and that the sun god and his consort had screwed over his daughter, and so he was bereft and went to find her, and came down to that underground lake to rescue her, but was completely unaware of the curse that she was under and the fact that if she looked into anyone's eyes, she would turn them to stone. And so in their meeting, Aglaika, without meaning to, turns her own father into stone and kills him. Traps him, really destroys him. He's just stone at that point. And so the whole elven pantheon loses the god of magic. And because of this, magic for the elves begins to wane and unravel and very slowly over many centuries fall apart. Until by the time of the current campaign, elves are all but completely absent in the world. In fact, elves aren't even available as a player character. If you want to play an elf kind of a character, you can play a human who has a certain percentage or a certain amount of elven blood in their ancestry. And I won't really get into that here, but that whole story kind of plays into how certain humans can sort of develop an innate ability to cast a magical spell. Always like a first level magical spell, but certain humans, because they have elven blood many generations back in a mixing of their family line, are able to cast a spell like sleep or light or charm person. And it's just an innate ability that they haven't really learned any magic. So anyway, getting back to the hill and all of that, ultimately a group of human heroes, Northmen, kind of Beowulf types, find their way down into the caves underneath the Cunning Tor, and they're exploring, and they stumble upon this being, Aglaika, by the edge of the water, and some of the creatures that she's made, her little friends, gray oozes and gelatinous cubes and that sort of thing. And of course they go in Northman fashion and attack and go to slay and loot. And at this point, Aglaika is furious. All she wanted to be is left alone. Okay? And so she kills all of them. She emerges from the cave in this vengeful fury and transforms herself into this towering giantess, naked hag that stomps across the entire eastern area of the Northmen's lands, all of the eastern warholds, and she kills everyone. She heaps up the bodies of men, women, and children in mounds as high as houses. And for 500 years, no one is able to go into all of the eastern warholds for fear of Aglaika and her creations. And at this point, Aglaika is starting to flex her muscles. She's emerged to find that the gods of the elves are gone, and that, at any rate, that she has nobody really in her pantheon left to oppose her except a few minor characters who are other hags, other hag-like creatures in the world. But they won't interfere with her because out of all of them, she is emerged to be the strongest. So now she can make things like trolls, and so Aglaika is responsible for all of the races of the trolls in the world. And she uses these to gain vengeance not only on men, but also on elves. And Aglaika is at least partially responsible for the final destruction and hunting down of the remaining elves in the world. So at any rate, time passes, and eventually a Northman hero arises and gathers around him a train of 100 sworn men, and they go to confront Aglaika in the eastern lands of the north, and they fight her. And in the end, incredibly, they're victorious. And so they bind this giant goddess onto a huge sled that they've constructed. And they haul her across the ice and snow of the north, across the winter's mark, to this giant dormant volcano. And they topple her into it. Now, along the way, if anybody touched the sled directly, rather than hauling it with its chains, Aglaika would just strike them dead. So the leader of these Northman heroes decides that the only way they're going to be able to deal with this curse of hers, or her power, is if a whole bunch of them topple her into the crater at the same time, and that way maybe her power will be spread out amongst them and she won't be able to just kill them. Kill whoever pushes her in. So they do that. And Aglaika topples in her chains on the sled down into the darkness and does curse these heroes. So that is where I came up with this possible sub-race called the Trollborn, where if you're a human and you come from the land of the Northmen, you have a very, very, very small chance that somewhere in your background is one of these heroes. And every once in a while, the offspring of these heroes is born as a Trollborn, touched by the power of Aglaika. And they manifest this as some sort of mutation. It could be like fanged teeth or claws, or higher strength than normal, or larger stature, giantish looking, that sort of thing. But over time, these characters, as they level up, have a chance of gaining another mutation and becoming even more horrific and monstrous. And I have a whole list of these written up. So that anybody who's born in the North these days, if their parents see that they have some strange mutation, they're typically just killed. Because nobody wants the offspring of Aglaika running around, because they're worried. The legends say that eventually one of these Trollborn is going to go to this mountain, go into the crater, down into the volcano, and release Aglaika back into the world. Nobody wants that. So at any rate, that's the story of Aglaika. Well, much later, there's this evil kingdom in the southeast called the Necrogarchy of Leng. And Leng is ruled by the equivalent of liches that slumber in the depths underneath the city. So anyway, this general called Pazarun Sin is put in charge of one of their three armies, and he marches into the north. And he destroys the Northman city that's built on the cunning Tor, and replaces it with a more southern-looking city with stone castles and stone walls and that sort of thing, and uses that as his capital for his kingdom of Asmorgar, which is incredibly evil. And there's a lot of stuff going on with him. He is eventually destroyed about 150 years ago in game time by this figure named Queen Gerid Half-Elven of the kingdom of Skierga, which is just to the east of the kingdom of Ostvik, where Bulgrad is located. At any rate, I'm out of time, so I just want to cut off there, and maybe we'll continue later. All right, thanks.